Hello, I'm Melanie Adkins. I'm a child and educational psychologist and I'm also a mum. Obviously at this time, bereavement is one of the aspects that psychologists are preparing for in their work. Lots of children have experienced already illness or a death of a family member. Obviously that's part of normal life, that's part of our work as psychologists, but obviously at this time it's more of a risk. There are greater numbers that could be involved. So I thought it'd be helpful just to talk a little bit about how to speak with children about grief. I am going to share a story I wrote quite some time ago. Often when children experience death, the first experience of that may be of a pet. And the story that I have written is about the death of my rabbit. I got the rabbit when I was 4. I got him because I was an only child and I wasn't able to have any brothers or sisters. So it sounds a bit funny, but in the end my parents got me a rabbit because that was something that I wanted instead of having a brother or sister. And that rabbit became very close to me. He actually lived until I was 15. And I did used to spend an awful lot of time with him. He used to follow me down the road without a lead on. And I used to treat him quite a lot like a baby, really. So he was called Sugar, and I'm going to share that story with you. But just to say a little bit about bereavement with children, sometimes adults are quite surprised at how seemingly well children seem to deal with death. They can talk quite matter of fact about the people that have died. It can seem that they're coping very well. Sometimes parents are a bit surprised by how well children seem to be coping. I think the important thing is to remember that grief is a bit like ebb and flow. It comes and goes, and children's understanding of grief varies at different ages. It's really important when you're talking with children about the possibility or if someone has died to use the words. It's quite confusing sometimes to use words like passed on because children don't often know what that means. So sometimes if you use the word death or dying or dead, sometimes to adults it sounds a bit shocking or quite sort of matter of fact, but actually children really need to hear simple language. They also need to hear the truth. Obviously you can decide how truthful you are to children, how much you say, but it's really beneficial for them to hear the truth. Quite often children surprise us and they know an awful lot already. They are very tuned in to people's emotions, they pick up things, they hear things, they sense things. So quite often we think we're protecting children by keeping things from them, but actually that can be more upsetting for them. So it's really important to offer the possibility for questions, to be truthful if you don't know, to keep things very simple, using simple language, to have some way of remembering the person. Sometimes you can do those things together, so sometimes having a memory box or thinking about what that person did which you really liked. Sometimes thinking about what it is about that person that you'd like to carry forward with you can be really helpful to bridge the gap. I think it's important to remember that children will have questions, and quite often adults can find those questions quite difficult. So it may be that you need to think about who might be the best person to deal or answer those questions with that person. But once you've decided that, it will be really helpful to let them ask those questions to that person and to let them have time to think about that person. Sometimes it's quite painful for adults to have photographs around, but sometimes children need to know that that person's still part of their experience, still part of their life. Another thing that's really important is to use stories and other things. Sometimes stories are really helpful because it allows you to experience something or talk about things in a very close relationship. So the relationship that you're reading in can sometimes help to hold the child through something that's quite tricky. which is why I decided to write several stories about death and bereavement. I've got a story called The Phoenix, which is about the death of a parent, and I will read that at some point and share that with you. That's based on an experience where one of my best friends died and left behind her child. And I think sometimes it's one of those things that people think it's really difficult to talk about, but what you need most of all when you're a child and when something like that has happened, to have a way of communicating with others about that. We get our support from being connected, and I know I'm saying that when we're in a socially isolated situation at the moment, but however you can connect and talk about those things is going to be really important. So we'll share some more tips on how to support children through bereavements, but for now I'm going to read my story. So this is called A Spoonful of Sugar. So the blurb says that sugar makes everything taste sweet, even those things like medicine that don't taste very nice. Just like sugar, my pet rabbit made everything better. That is until one day when sugar wasn't there. Instead, I had to think about the things Sugar and I used to do to make things feel better again. A Spoonful of Sugar is designed to help children to deal with the death of those they love by remembering the special times they shared together. And I haven't got any illustrations for this yet, so you can use your imagination. Once upon a spring day, long, long ago, I was given the best gift of all, a spoonful of sugar, all of my own. When I was 4, I had a rabbit. He was snowy white and very sweet, so I called him Sugar, good enough to eat. I loved him more than teddies, I liked him more than toys, I liked him more than girls, I loved him more than boys. Sugar was my special friend, different from the rest. The one I trusted most, he was the very best. We played in the flowers, Sugar burrowed in the ground. We played in the house, Sugar followed me around. We cuddled in the sunshine, we cuddled in the rain. Every day was different, no game was the same. When I was feeling poorly or just a little sad, my Sugar made me better, things didn't seem so bad. Sugar was my treasure, the one I most adored, and as I grew older, I loved him more and more. Sugar always listened to what I had to say. He didn't seem to mind, at night or in the day. He helped me with my schoolwork, we snuggled in the chair. As long as I had Sugar, I didn't have a care. But one day when I went to see him, Sugar was asleep, snoozing in the sunshine, sleeping soft and deep. Sugar did not wake. He just slept on and on. Although Sugar died that day, we'd made memories that last. Those life pictures continue to comfort me, even though so many years have passed. And I can still remember of the lovely things we used to do. Sugar and I together, just us two. So I hope maybe if your children are talking to you about people dying, or maybe you've had an experience like that recently, then maybe this is a story that you can share with them. I designed it so that it was rhyming, so that it's really containing and quite predictable, until obviously the pace changes and the rhyme stops just for a moment to kind of illustrate the kind of pause that happens, or the kind of jolt that happens when somebody dies or something dies. So hopefully you might find it useful. I will come back and share some more information about how children do understand death and dying, and some tips about how you can support them with that. Thanks for listening. Bye.